This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin. With me this week, two fantastic human beings. I'm joined by Brian Murray.
Hello.
And René Rodriguez.
Sorry, what's up?
Thank you for paying attention, René. We've only been off for 5 weeks. Welcome back. We're back. We're here to talk about comic books. And, I'm very excited to be back. I've been itching. Like, usually before we go to the summer, I'm like, oh my God, I'm fucking done with this show. But this last month, I've been like, I need this podcast in my life more than anything in the entire world. So we're back. I'm very excited. I apologize if you guys can hear the background noise. My neighbors are having a good time this Sunday morning as we record. So if there's music in the background, I'm sorry. But you know what? Let me just go into the thing that I'm used to doing on the show, which is ask one question or two questions, which is how have you been and how have comic books been? Let's start with you, Brian.
I've been pretty good. Can't complain. Been playing a lot of Lego Batman 3.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's I for some reason love those Lego games. I could not explain to somebody why, but they just I think that the gratification cycle is perfect for the way my brain works. I'm rewarded in all the right moments that it just keeps me in my chair playing.
Right. Seeing all those Lego bricks fly up to the top of your screen every time you break something, I totally get that.
Yeah. Comics wise, I haven't read a whole lot lately. But I did re-up my Shonen Jump subscription for today's episode. And so I read Kaiju number 8, chapters 1 through 5. It's pretty fun manga so far. It's about this guy who wants to fight Kaiju, but he keeps failing the test. So instead he's part of the cleanup crew. It's his job to dispose of the corpses.
Okay.
And then through the course of the first issue or first two issues, it gets infected by some kind of parasite and gets turned into a kaiju. So
great.
I'm wondering if there's going to be some black suit Spider-Man thing, because he's like a man-sized kaiju and he can turn back into his normal self. So he's trying to use these powers to help fight the kaiju. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if it's going to be a thing where his kaiju nature is going to surge up on him. He's gonna have to fight that off, but I think we'll see where that goes. The other thing I read was I finally caught up on My Hero Academia.
Yo,
which common staple on this show, I think. Some of these action sequences in the last 20 odd volumes were very hard to follow.
Yes, I agree.
It's maybe it's just because I'm used to watching the anime, and it's so much easier to track who's doing what, where, when in that medium. But I had no fucking idea who was fighting who in some places.
There's definitely scenes that involve characters like Dobby or Endeavor, where you're kind of just there's so much explosion and fire, I can't really find a face in this panel. So I totally understand that.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is that this is another in the most recent issues there's been a mass hero assembly, basically a ton of heroes from all over the place are joining up to take on whatever. And so there's 50, 60 characters you have to try and keep track of now. And some of them look kind of similar.
Yeah.
And I'm not making the age-old all anime characters look the same complaint. Just when you have that many characters, some of them are going to have similar design choices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Brian, really quick.
Well, I think, René, before you start to slap Brian around about plot, I think he's trying not to spoil things. Let's go with that.
I actually had nothing to do with that. I'm climbing off my anime manga weeaboo high horse for the moment. I was just going to ask if you actually meant the last 20 volumes, or did you mean the last 20 chapters?
I meant the last 20 chapters.
Okay. I was just curious because there's only 24 volumes out of the series, so I was just asking.
Yeah, that would have been a lot.
I'm a quick reader.
Series,
I was like,
wow,
the detail that Brian's the first 4 volumes, I was really there, and then the last 20, I'm just really confused on all the fighting scenes.
No, that is my simple Western brain only knowing issues and volumes.
Okay.
Well, speaking of you, Renee, how have you been? How have comic books been?
Well, I've got a smoothie in front of me, so things are going well at the moment. And now that it's done, things are instantly horrible. But yeah, comics are always good. I've been buying a lot of digital manga, and that in itself is probably a problem that I don't know how to rein in. But we move on. I've also tried to lately move out of the box that I've put myself in, where I mainly have read Jump since I was like 15. So I decided to try and read some different stuff, because I only really stuck with shonen or seinen stuff. So I decided to start reading some shoujo manga recently. And I read this manga called Perfect World, and I read volumes 1 through 9. And this story is by story and art by Rie Aruga, and it's a story that develops about an interior designer and an architect, and the architect happens to be in a wheelchair, and it's about their romance, how it develops between the two of them. And I think it's a very well written story. The art is fantastic. The story is emotional as shit, dude. But it's a really good series. I highly recommend it. If you've got the time. I've also picked up this series called The Way of the House Husband. I read volume 3. I love the crap out of this. I take it Mike knows about it. Brian, have you heard of this?
I love this book.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it just from watching Mike enthuse about it.
Oh, man. Story and art by Kosuke Ono. And it's a story about a former Yakuza captain who is now a house husband. And he takes the seriousness of the Yakuza to everything from, buying groceries to, doing the laundry and even killing a cockroach. And honestly, the seriousness of every silly thing is absolutely fantastic. I can't recommend this series enough. And I also read Kaiju number 8, Brian. So, I mean, yeah, I agree with what Brian said. It's a good series. I like it so far. And the last thing that I read this week was Blue Exorcist Chapter 123, story and art by Kazue Kato. And the battle between the Yukimura brothers, Rin and Yukio, has just continued this month. And for those of you that don't know, Blue Exorcist is about a young boy and his twin brother who are raised in an orphanage that's run by priests. And then the main character, Rin, finds out that he's actually the son of Satan, and that he is potentially going to be overtaken by Satan one day unless he learns to control his demonic powers. And then he joins a religious order that also hunts demons. And turns out his brother Yukio is a part of it. And it used to be a weekly series, and now it's a monthly series. And it's pretty good. Yeah. And that's what I've been reading. What about you, Mike?
I have been reading quite a bit. Mostly I've been reading One Piece. I'll be completely honest. I'm up to chapter 639, so that's my One Piece update for this week. I just want to say Way of the House Husband might be the funniest manga I've ever read, period. It's so good. If you haven't checked this out, go grab it on Comixology. It will change the way you think about everything, because it is so funny. And you also kind of then want like a full-blown like story about the Yakuza, but at the same time, this book is fantastic. That book's amazing. I did read Far Sector 1 through 7. This is N.K. Jemisin with art by Jamal Campbell. A new Green Lantern, Sojourner, aka Joe Mullen, is sent out in the far reaches of space to the city of Enduring, a space station composed of 3 very specific alien races brought together by a shared violent history. And they need Joe for one reason: to solve a murder, something that's very new to this oddly stable civilization. If you aren't reading this book, I highly, highly implore you to pick up what might be the most important book DC has published in probably the last 20 years, period. It is so relevant right now for a book that came out last November. It is astounding how relevant it is today, in terms of what's happening in this like political climate of the United States, specifically around like police brutality and the way that basically Black Americans have been treated. It's something that is not new to Black folks, but it is something that I think is new to folks like me, like a white guy. I am just not aware of how prevalent some of these things are. And N.K. Jemisin writing a book about that right now is incredible. I think you all should check this out. That's not just what Far Sector is, because it is a character study about this brand new Green Lantern character, Jo Mullein, and her coming to try to solve this murder and the complications around finding a murderer in a society where emotion has been suppressed. That's kind of like the hook on this book. And so you find out about the various folks that make up this giant space station known as the City of Enduring. And from there, the plot just gets incredibly complicated as all of the major players start to actually find their place in the story, and there's twists and turns and revelations and love and romance and anger and fury, and it's all over the board, and it's so wonderful that it all keeps coming back to this idea of there being no emotion or suppressed emotion on this space station. But the story is fantastic. I really, really think everybody, if you read number one and are not hooked, I would like to have a conversation with you. But this is one of those Mike Rappin guarantee books where if you read number one and you don't like it, I will refund you the money over PayPal or Venmo or something. So you hit me up on Twitter and I'll make that happen. But anyways, Jamal Campbell's art for this book is unbelievable. I have never seen a book so pretty. Like, if we're talking about books that floored me as much as the art in this book does, I'm talking like Mr. Miracle, Fraction and Aha's Hawkeye. Like, you may not be a fan of Alex Ross's art, but his pages in his art is very beautiful in a lot of ways, I think. And this is where Jamal Campbell's art is. Every single page is picturesque and beautiful, and when he does 2-page spreads, you kind of want to fall over. Like, I'm kicking myself for not having a physical copy of this book, which is why I know that when it comes out, I'm buying it in trade, period. There's no questions. I'm pre-ordering it. I don't care what the cost is. I might even go for the hardcover. I know it's insane, but the one thing I'll say about this, Jo Mullein as a character, she is complex. She is fully explored. Every piece of her character is defined, and the more this story goes on, the more you feel like this is a real person. I feel like she's very strongly modeled after Janelle Monáe in the art, and so like I already love that. But yeah, I really, really, really love everything about this character. She's so touching. She's got passion that simmers under her skin, revealing itself in wonderful moments of touching emotion. And she's designed, in my mind, to be the coolest Green Lantern you've ever seen. I love everything about her. So if you're not reading Far Sector, please go pick this book up. I guarantee you will be satisfied. It is fantastic. And as someone who really doesn't read a lot of Green Lantern, doesn't necessarily find that the idea of Green Lantern is very exciting, this book is beautiful. And it's amazing.
Mike,
really quick,
how could somebody be cooler than Kyle Rayner?
Brian, that's a question experts other than myself will have to answer.
I thought nobody liked Kyle Rayner. I thought everybody fucking
talks
about...
That was the joke.
Oh, I was
right?
like, everybody talks about Hal Jordan and fucking Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner. And
yes.
I like Kyle Rayner. Fuck you, Brian.
All right, Renee. All right, just listen, Renee. We're gonna have to put you in a corner really quick. Just don't even. But really quick, let me just talk about a couple other books. I read Hedra. This is by Jesse Lonergan. Excuse me. It's a one shot that will bend your mind in half. It's space is vast and we are but a morsel in it. And this book is a play on sci-fi while also using the comic medium as an experimental surface. I'm pretty sure everybody on comics Twitter was talking about this when it came out like 2 weeks ago, but I just wanted to mention it because for a one shot that's oversized, I can't believe that Image published this. This looked like something that I would have to buy special order from like a French publisher. There's no way that a book like this should come out in the West, and yet it did. So here's to more experimental one shots coming from bigger publishers. I'm all about it. And then I want to run through a huge list of books that I read over the past month, because we've been off for a month, folks. And you know what? We still read a lot of other comics. I read Incredible Doom number 2 through 6. This is a Comixology Submit series that I found out comes printed in these really beautiful little pocket-sized books. So I bought all of those. It's a fantastic book about growing up on the early internet. I read Time Paradox Ghostwriter up through current. I just want to shout that out for our Discord folks, because we've been reading it as a family, and it's really, really fun. Sunday becomes like what happened in Time Paradox Ghostwriter Day, which I really like. Chew number 1 by John Layman and the artist whose name I didn't write down. This is another story in the Chew universe. This is CHU number 1. I read Harley Quinn Black and White and Red number 1 through 6 on recommendation from Danny. This is honestly pretty good. There's like 2 of these 6 issues that I didn't really care for, but on the whole, I really liked it. For Molly number 1 and 2, I just want to shout that out because we have an interview with Gabe Cheng that's coming out as a bonus minisode in the next week or so. So get ready for that. He wrote that series. I read Folklords number 1 through 5. This is by Matt Kint and Matt Smith. This miniseries is just okay. Sometimes miniseries are just okay. I read X Factor number 1. I was kind of disappointed in how clunky this issue was, but I understand that it's all for setup. So I'm going to keep reading it. And that's my quick update. I know I talked bad about an X-Men book that everyone loves, so come at me, I guess. Comic books are coming out on August 12th, 2020. I want to know what you guys are excited about this week. I'm going to toss over to you, Renee.
I'm excited for the 6th chapter of a new series called Hard-Boiled Cop and Dolphin. Story and art by Ryuhei Tamura. This is the creator of Beelzebub. For those of you who know what that is, I'm assuming that Brian and Mike both don't. Beelzebub is a very weird comic, which was about a delinquent who went to a delinquent high school who becomes the protector of a new demon lord who he's like the prince of the underworld, and he's supposed to eventually destroy the world, but he has to grow up into a proper demon first, so he's being cared for by a delinquent because he's really strong. And it's a really weird series. It's kind of funny, but this is the new series by the creator of that, and it is about a hard-boiled cop who is transferred to a little island, and his name is a pun on shark, and then he gets partnered with a dolphin, and
like you do.
Yeah, and they start, having to deal with water crimes, or ocean crimes, as they call it. I'm 100% serious, and it's as goofy as it sounds, and it is also fantastic. It is so wonderfully weird, and it's the perfect example of why I love manga, because there are no rules. You just kind of have to pick it up and run with it. I think in a lot of Western books, there's so much logic, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want that. I want it to be absolutely weird. And you know what? Because it takes it, and there's, even the last chapter, even chapter 5, they were like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And it sounded really, really simple. And then they turned it on its head in the most fantastic way. And the art is fantastic. It's so silly and so serious. I love this book. I'm also going to give a quick shout out to Mission Yozakura Family, Chapter 46. You should read that series because it's fantastic. Story and art by Hitsuji Gondaira. And that's what I'm excited for this week.
Okay. I feel like my brain turned off for half a minute, and you started talking about the Beelzebub story.
I did.
And I was like, I thought this was about a cop. I totally get it.
Because it's a hard-boiled cop and Dolphin is so incredibly weird. But it's like, if you've read Beelzebub or if you've seen the anime, you're like, somehow this feels less odd, but also at the same time, I get it.
Yeah, it's like a logical next step for that creator.
Yeah. And the thing is, what I love is that it's very fun, and it's very kind of like easy to grasp, but the art goes from really silly to super well detailed, from panel to panel. And I think that, Ryuhei Tamura is just, a master of his craft. It's a wonderful series. I'm really excited. I hope it runs for a very long time. Or if it doesn't, I hope that it's still a fun ride.
Gotcha. What about you, Brian? What are you excited for this week?
So I'm kind of taking a chance here. My pick this week is Something is Killing the Children, number 9. And the reason I'm saying it's taking a chance is because I have not read issues 2 through 8 of this book.
Okay.
But issue number 1, I thought was so good and left such a big impression on me that like this is almost a pick of I'm excited this comic is still going.
Gotcha.
Like I still need to catch up, and I think I actually saw the first volume on Hoopla, so maybe I'll read that this afternoon.
Very nice.
Or maybe I'm imagining that. But
well, I mean, either way, I've only heard super positive things about this book, so I'm excited that it's still going as well. I don't know, I haven't yet to sit down and read it, but I've heard very good things.
Yeah, I mean the first issue was like cool and dramatic and chilling in just the right way. That it's a very well executed like horror comic, which is not a common thing.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, for me, I am excited about a new number 1. This is Big Girls number 1, written and drawn by Jason Howard, who I have loved since the day I found one of his earliest comics. I'm excited to see Jason Howard do his own book. And the premise is something like, when men become giant monsters hellbent on destroying the world, only girls can stop them. Big girls. Which, okay. But the idea is about like kaiju-sized humans fighting and kicking each other's asses, and I'm cool for that. And the last bit of description for this book is a tale that's a cross between John Wick and Godzilla by way of HBO's Girls, which even then is still kind of a seller for me because I love all 3 of those things unabashedly. Like, I don't care. I liked HBO's Girls for the most part. That might be because of my bias towards Adam Driver, but that being said,
might be.
Okay, definitely is. But nonetheless, I am excited to see what Jason Howard is doing. I feel like someone who was probably in the marketing team for Image was like, we need to sell this by doing that thing that is very common where we cross a couple things together to get people excited about a book. So regardless, I trust Jason Howard to do something really interesting with his series. So I'm on board for it. And just more Jason Howard art in my life. I'm very, very biased. But also one thing I want to shout out is that comments on League of Comic Geeks should not ever be allowed, period. I don't know why that's a thing, but it is the worst place on the internet. Worse than YouTube comments, I think, because I don't know why comic book readers are so angry and edgy, but they just make things bad sometimes. So yeah, that's what I'm excited for. Big Girls number 1, very, very excited. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to be talking about manga for newbies, or manga for people that don't normally read manga, or we don't associate that. We gave Brian some manga to read. So when we come back, we're going to talk about that. For our show this week, we are doing a thing that I think did not too long ago with Nick, where we had him sit down and read some manga. And in this case, we had Brian sit down and read some manga. Not to say that Brian doesn't read manga, but René and I wanted to try to push a couple new series on Brian and see what he thought about them, because he's got such a critical eye.
You definitely picked 3 things that I never would have picked up on my own. So
exactly.
That was definitely a success.
Yeah, and I think that's what we were going for here. So for this episode, we had Brian read Dr. Stone number 1 through 3, Act Age number 1 through 3, or Act Age, whichever, I don't know how you pronounce it, and Spy X Family number 1 through 3. And so I guess we'll just go through those in that order. I had previously read Dr. Stone, so I was really interested, and I tried Spy X Family, so I had some thoughts, but Act Age was new to me. And yeah, so I guess let's go into Dr. Stone. The premise of this book is, something happens. It looks like there's a comet or something that causes everybody in the world to turn to stone, and almost 3,700 years pass, and our 2 main characters hatch out of stone. And then the story continues in the next 3 issues. So Brian, what did you think about Dr. Stone 1 through 3?
I thought that Dr. Stone is such an interesting premise. Like, this idea of people being turned to stone, but then waking up thousands of years in the future and having to reestablish society. I thought that was really cool. My biggest hurdle in this book is that so far we have not met a single character that I've liked.
Sure.
The main guy, I forget what his name is. I forgot to write it down.
Kaiju or Senku?
Senku, I think, the science guy.
Senku, yeah.
Yeah. He's a fucking asshole. Like, he's the worst. All he does is talk shit about people. And I'm sure that, like, part of the story is him learning that, just because I'm smart doesn't mean I'm better than everybody.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold on to that.
All he does is act like because he's smart, he's better than everybody.
Yeah.
That continues on for the rest of the series. Yeah. In fact, more of that happens, and from different characters as well.
God, I can't imagine.
Brian, you should probably not read the rest of Dr. Stone, honestly.
Yeah.
You're just not going to have a good time.
I'll say I wasn't planning on it. And maybe part of it is because, like, when I was a sophomore in high school, I had similar thoughts bouncing around inside my head. Like, I was also an egotistical jackass. But I grew out of it, and maybe I just don't like being reminded of those days.
Sure.
But yeah, like I really love the premise, though. It's such I wish that I could get into it because I genuinely want to know what happens with the story. I just wish I had a mute button for that guy.
Yeah, I think what makes Dr. Stone really interesting, like, I remembered when I sat down to read this book, the same thing happened when I was reading these first 3 chapters. They go by so quickly because there's such an interesting question that needs to be answered, which is, how does the story move forward, right? You know, how does this story actually continue? It can't just be these 2 guys we're going to figure out all these different things. And I like the way that the story approaches science is the key to everything and blah, blah, blah. And it is, again, it's in your face, like you said, Brian, like it's these egotistical, like, I'm so fucking smart kinds of things. If you can get past that, like, this has been my experience. I got past that by just saying, okay, these guys are just going to be as anime as possible, and they're going to be as, like, over the top and insane as possible. Let's see where the story goes from there. And I got, I think, 25 or 30 chapters in, thinking I couldn't stop. And if I remember correctly, I read those in a sitting because the story is so fast paced. It does not stop. Every time you think there's even a moment of lull, something big dramatically pushes the story forward, creates a left turn, because basically what I think the creators of this book did is they said, all right, everything is 3,700 years in the future. Therefore, we have a blank slate to do anything. Anything that comes out of left field is fine because we haven't even established what the new norm is yet. And so as the book goes on, they are establishing what that world is and what the new norm looks like. And again, I only read like 30 chapters, but I was really driven by the constant, almost like Death Note style chess thing that is happening with our main characters as they try to figure out the world. Now we do end up with extra characters in the story, and there is like an arch nemesis and a villain kind of scenario that shows up in the story. But I think really what we should have done is had you read the first volume, because I think there's a lot more story that gets developed in like the first 10 chapters than what we see in the first 3. But yeah, I don't know what it is. This book, if you can get past that, like, I'm so smart, look at how smart I am, character flaw that this character has, or character trait, this book is pretty fun, but that is the focus of the story. Like, it never gets better.
Yeah, part of me is just like, why does his friend let him treat him like that? Because he's always like, you big oaf, you fucking moron. Like, I'm just like,
well, I think it's like he just wants to be included, right? He just is happy that his friend, who is so smart, wants to be his friend, you know?
Yeah. Oh, and then never mind the one female character that has a name so far has literally been objectified the whole time.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
She's just a naked statue.
That one does change.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to.
Yeah, I actually think that I think there's a development in the numerous women that are in this book. But you have to kind of read a bit further beyond just the first couple of chapters to really get into the nuanced other characters that exist in this story.
It's actually terrible because I don't remember the character that Brian's talking about. I don't remember her name because her and Kaiju basically become like background characters for the rest of the series.
For the book. Yeah.
They're gone for like a good 40 some chapters. And then
Mhm.
when they come back, like they're just, it's like, oh yeah, we knew Senku back in the day and type thing. And they do have important roles still to play, because later they sort of have a community, spoilers. But there's more characters get introduced, and like all these other characters become like the main focus. And it's kind of, I thought it was really funny because I've read Dr. Stone from the beginning, and they kind of made it seem like Kaiju was going to be the main character, and then he just kind of faded into the background for every like 10 chapters or so. I'm like, where is Taiju? I don't even remember what he's doing in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be like the everyman, and then he disappears because Dr. Stone is unfortunately like the more interesting character because he's actually doing things other than just being strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they realized that they made their like best friend sidekick character way more like empathetic and like so much easier to connect with than their main character. And they're like, oh shit, we gotta get this guy out of here. He's gonna pull too much attention away from Dr. Smartpants.
Yeah. I think when they introduce Chrome later in the series, like Chrome becomes Chrome's kind of like the kid from Camelot type sort of thing, where he's, all that information that Senku is just spitting out, vomits out, is kind of passed on to someone who's a lot more empathetic and that you can deal with a lot easier. And he's not just, 10 billion% science is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, it's so over the top. Like I think the thing that kind of like whiplashed me was like going from manga like My Hero Academia, where your main character is this underdog, or reading like a Naruto, or reading like a Bleach, where like you've got all these characters that are like, I'm so powerful, but I just can't find my place. And to Dr. Stone, who's like, I'm so fucking sure that this kid's gonna die right now, 10 billion%. Like if they took a sociopathic bent with this character, this would be the scariest manga I've ever read.
Yeah, if he was the villain, I'd be much more interested in what's going on here.
Okay, well then, Brian, you're gonna have to read the rest of the series, because that's pretty much that's pretty much what's happening right now.
He's a villain to people other than the reader.
Oh no, they just introduced a new character that's exactly like him, but is the villain.
Oh, good.
Nice. Does he have a mustache or a goatee?
No, he looks almost exactly like Senku.
Well, goddamn it! Then why did they even come on?
Except that he dresses in black, and he's American. Yeah, I don't know why I put on a German accent for that one.
German? Why is he German?
He's American. They're in America. The reason I think I really, really like Dr. Stone, though, is because it's a gag manga, which it's, at the time that Dr. Stone had come out, Jump hadn't been flooded with them. So it was really kind of interesting to see. And I thought it was, when I first read it, I thought it was incredibly funny, like all the little stupid jokes. And then I also, what I maybe want to keep reading it, was that they basically did science experiments in it, and they're like, you could actually do this, except for when they get to some more interesting stuff, they're like, you probably shouldn't do this without parental supervision, or like
like in the first 3 chapters they make wine, and they're like, you just put some grapes and raisins in the bottle and let them sit. It's like I'm surprised there wasn't like, don't do this at home.
I think that they did, don't they? Or I remember when I first started reading it,
put some sort of warning on it. I remember.
Yeah, they were like, don't make wine, kids, it's or don't drink it until you're 19 or whatever the drinking age is in Japan, because I don't remember.
3,700.
Yeah. But I remember that's what I really liked about Dr. Stone, was the fast pace, the jokes, because I was, everything was so serious for a hot minute in Jump. And then I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of one of the tropes of manga, is that they're like, okay, look at this thing. Now we're going to tell you in extreme detail how it works. And I think that it actually, to have like, it kind of reminded me of like, watching Bill Nye, except, with cartoons, and if Bill Nye was a narcissist, doing science experiments.
I think that's the perfect description. What if Bill Nye was a narcissist? Like, in
a new Stone Age, and there were no cameras, but he was still trying to explain science to everybody.
Well, yeah. So it sounds to me, Brian, like you're probably not going to continue reading this book. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I might. Like, if I'm bored someday and looking for something to read, I might keep going on it just to see what happens. But
Okay.
it's definitely gonna be one of those where like I read a couple chapters and then don't pick it up for 2 weeks.
Gotcha.
There's one last thing I'd like to say about Dr. Stone, which I completely forgot, is I always forget why they call it Dr. Stone, and it's because they're talking about soap and how it's the basis of life, and they refer to it as Dr. Stone. They say that like in chapter 2, and then it never comes back ever again.
Yeah.
Like they don't even show them bathe.
Again. I missed that again because I feel like I looked for that the first time I read it, and I was like, I don't understand, but okay, that's just the name of this book.
Yeah, no, Senku's explaining to Taiju, he was like, you know, cleaning and getting rid of germs. That was the big moment in history where we were finally able to, you know, like look at like, hey, we can stay alive for longer, and this was a very important thing. And then he was like, so this is our ultimate thing, Dr. Stone. And then they just don't talk about it for the rest of the series.
Okay. I mean, it's like that's like Bleach, right? Like, why is it called Bleach? Because his hair is orange.
Yeah,
okay,
and everybody thinks he bleaches his hair, and he's like,
yeah,
it's my natural hair color.
Yeah.
Oh, just a shonen protagonist. Leave me alone.
Yeah, I mean, what the fuck is up with that hair and Dr. Stone? Come on. But yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about the next book that we had Brian read. This is Act Age or Act Age. I don't know. But this is a story by Tatsui Matsuki with art by Shiro Usazaki. I can't read and speak at the same time. So the idea is that there is a woman who her name is Key, and she wants to be an actress, and there is a giant 30,000 person audition. She doesn't get it, but then there's a director who says, I love her acting, and he is trying to appeal to some studio exec to get this girl Key back in to audition for something, and then they have her come in, and then they reject her again, and then suddenly she's on the set of a commercial. This story makes no fucking sense from chapter 1, but the idea of a shonen manga that is about like someone's acting skill and they don't realize how well they have it or how good they are at doing something that's so hard for people totally makes sense. But this feels so weird as a shonen comic. So René, am I getting this description wrong? I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong here.
I mean, kind of. It is about Kei Unagi, who is she's basically an orphan. Her father left their family, and then her mom died, and so now she takes care of her 2 younger twin siblings while she's still in, I believe she's in middle school at the beginning of the series, and now she's in high school. And so she just kind of does sort of odd jobs in order to take care of her family, and she goes to this audition. And but the point is that she is a method actress. So she takes things from that she's experienced and whatnot, or things that she's seen, and then brings that, like the way that she would picture herself be doing in these scenarios, and brings that out. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's really weird, or that's really dangerous. Like, how can you do that? And a lot of people don't like it, like how most people don't like method actors, because you're like, oh, you're kind of taking it too far. Be less weird or intense. And
sure.
Then there's a director who is like, I have a project that she would be perfect for, but not yet. She's too green. So he basically takes her, and he's going to mold her into the actress that he thinks she can be for the perfect project that he's going to do. And he's he's like an independent director, but he's got a lot of critics love him, but he isn't a super success, so to speak. And then the series is all about molding Kei Unagi into one of the great actresses of our time. And then she meets different actors and actresses along the way, and directors and whatnot.
Yeah. And I mean, her backstory is filled with, she's got this whole closet full of old movies that she watches and she studies them or something. Yeah. So Brian, I am curious to know what you thought of this book, because I was confused by it from the get-go. But then by the second or third chapter, I was like, oh, I could see how this incredibly contrived plot could flourish into a really interesting series as you explain all of the various intricacies of acting. So I don't know. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, that's not what method acting is. Like, drawing on your past experiences to inform your performance is just acting. Method acting is when you, like the Daniel Day-Lewis thing, where like he was answering text messages as Abraham Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's where you take on the role and try to become that person in your day-to-day life. It's why Jared Leto was such a fucking pain in the ass during Suicide Squad.
Right.
So, I mean, that was like a pedantic thing that got me off on the wrong foot with this manga. But because like I was watching, I was like, this girl's not a method actor. She's a sociopath. She's incapable of empathy. Like she can only show emotions if she has personally been in the situation described. And I would love it if that was like a thing that the book explored, like her learning empathy. But I suspect that's not going to be the case. Also, like the book started off describing acting as this bizarre form of pleasure, which I thought was like just creepy enough that I was going into it, I was like, is this going to be a weird sex thing?
Did René make us read a weird sex thing? That was kind of, yeah, I got you.
Well, no, it's just like Food Wars. Food Wars is a weird sex thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
he's done it before. I wouldn't put it past him.
Food Wars is another one of those that I love in concept. I just can't get into
the
execution.
record, I tell everybody when I'm like, if you're gonna read Shokugeki no Soma, just be aware, it's weird. Yeah. It's a lot.
No, I went into that with eyes open. You definitely.
Yeah.
It's like I try to tell people really, really early on. I was like, look, don't watch this anime if other people are around.
Don't watch it on the bus. Don't watch it on a plane. You watch this in your basement with a blanket around the screen because no one else needs to see this.
Maybe just wear headphones.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I mute all those parts because I'm like, I feel weird watching it. That's also why I don't watch it. I read it instead.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I think that sorry, I'm having a hard time putting it into words, like with Act Age. Like,
the reason I did this to you guys is purely because when I read it, when I heard about what it was, because I didn't want to read it for the longest time because I was like, oh, it's a manga about acting. I was like, that's so stupid. Then I was like, but René, isn't one of your favorite manga about making manga? And I was like, how dare you bring this at me? It's like, isn't your favorite manga about a board game? And I was like, how dare you, brain? And I was like, well, I have to read this now. So
right.
I just kind of powered through it. And somewhere along the way, I don't even remember because I think at first I didn't like it. And then somewhere along the way, I was like, oh, I'm really invested in this play that they're doing. And like, with most manga where I'm like, this is an absolutely ridiculous thing. I don't even know why I care about reading this. And eventually I was like, I care a lot about this. I want to know. Mm-hmm. And I think definitely the series takes a turn when Kei gets a rival, which I think happens fairly early in the series.
I don't know what that is.
A rival?
Yeah.
Like a shonen rival, like somebody to compete against.
Sorry. So we're talking about acting, and all I can think of is the movie Arrival. I was like,
I thought you were doing a really like big joke, like a real like rival. What's that? I've never heard of that.
Well, you said Arrival, and I was like, because in my head she owns all these movies. I'm like, maybe she bought the very good sci-fi movie called Arrival, and that's a moment in the series for some reason.
And then it turned me
I think very good
time travel
is a bit.
Yeah, again, I need to get more sleep apparently because we're talking about a core mechanic of all manga, and I'm just like, no, we're talking about that movie Arrival, right? Okay. Anyways,
no, she gets a
rival person,
to act against or act with. This, it kind of changes the story a little bit, and when she has to go, spoiler alert here, because I don't think Brian's going to keep reading this, so I don't really care. But she sort of gets a little bit more of fame as the series goes on, and then she has to keep going back to school, and she is poor, and so she lives in a public place. She's in the public eye, even though she is she's starting to gain fame, but she's still a very regular person, and she kind of has to deal with that, and her siblings do, and all that. And so there's other things that come into the series, and she does come across a bunch of other things with her past, and you learn more about both the director and the other actors that she acts with, and they kind of all have their own demons, as they do in manga. And so
as people tend to.
Yeah.
Stories tend to introduce characters and their flaws, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, as the series progresses, I think it becomes more interesting, but I would agree that if I had only read the first 3 chapters and had stopped there, I probably would not have continued the series. But, and this is the thing that I do constantly, which is what makes me want to read entire series, is I will read one of the newest chapters of the series, and I will be like, well, how did we get here? This seems really interesting. Let's go back to the beginning. And I think that's what drives me to read a series and that's exactly what happened when I started reading Act Age. I was in the middle they were in the middle of like a story arc, and I was like, I have no idea how we got here. So let's find out. But I think if I had only read the first 3 chapters with nothing else other than just my friend recommended this to me, I don't know if I would have continued reading it.
Yeah, I think that's a pitfall that I get with every kind of media, like definitely not just manga. Like if I read the first 2 issues or watch the first 2 episodes or whatever and I'm not into it, then that's usually going to be the end of it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter how good it gets later. I'm not going to find out.
Yeah. If you had only seen the first episode of Grey's Anatomy and didn't have the second episode readily accessible, would you have continued on with the series, Brian?
I mean, yes, because the first episode is excellent. It introduces a variety. We'll talk about that later.
Oh, that's a whole other show. We'll do that. It's called I Watch Grey's Anatomy. It's a sequel show that we're gonna do to I Read Comic Books.
We'll
Patreon only.
Here's the other thing.
Last summer where Brian watched like 14 seasons of Grey's Anatomy in 2 months.
Okay, exactly. Here's the other thing was that I actually tried really hard to think of like series that I thought Brian would like, and I did this with Nick. And the thing is, I was like, I kind of failed with Nick because I was like, apparently I don't know what Nick likes. But I was like,
no one does.
I was like, I've known Brian for like 10 plus years. I was like, I should be able to do this. And apparently not. But also Brian really likes Grey's Anatomy, which I did not see coming. So I was like, maybe I don't know Brian at all. You know?
Maybe Brian's tastes have changed over the decade that you've known him.
I don't know. I feel like 90% sure that he probably still listens to the same music that he did back in college.
Yeah, that's definitely true. My music taste stopped developing in 2012.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on. Let's talk about the last series that we have on our list, which is Spy X Family number 1 through 3. This is by Tatsuya Endo. I did not like this first chapter when I first read it, but Renee, you do a much better job of this, and I should have done this from the get-go. What is this book about?
So this book is about a spy named Twilight who he has to infiltrate a neighboring country, and it's actually a country that's been split into 2. So it's kind of like East and West Germany during the Cold War. And so Twilight is a spy for, I can never remember which country that he is a spy for. But he is infiltrating the neighbor country, and he's trying to stop a war splitting out between the 2 countries. And so he has to infiltrate a school where the son of a general is at, and he has to try and get close to this general. So he's going to do it through his son. So in order to do that, he has to adopt a daughter, or he has to adopt a child and get her into the school to get close to the son, to get close to the general. So he basically has to create a family as a spy and not let them catch on. So he adopts a little girl who happens to be psychic, who is also obsessed with spies. And so she knows everything about him, and she gets adopted. And then through a series of events, the spy realizes that he needs a wife, and then ends up marrying an assassin.
He meets a woman who ends up being an assassin. Like, it's all a series of quinkydinks.
She just happens to be an assassin, and the only person that is aware of they're all hiding this from each other. The only person that knows all the secrets is the little girl who is psychic and can read everybody's minds. And she's like, this is the coolest and greatest thing that has ever happened to me. And also, spoiler alert, they eventually get a dog that can see the future.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So I think this book really didn't hit with me. Like I said, like the first chapter really didn't hit with me, but reading through the next two, I can kind of feel the charm that this book has, and I think I'm going to keep reading it because it is fucking over the top and insane. Like the fact that they're like this very timid woman is also an assassin by night, just for some reason tickles me. But yeah, Brian, I want to know what you thought of this.
Yeah, I think that the moment when we discovered that Anya, this 6-year-old child, is also a telepath was the moment I decided to keep reading this book.
Okay.
Like, because it seems like it's gonna be like just a standard like spy narrative or whatever, and then it's like, nope, this kid is also magic.
But also, like, how beautifully like crafted were the thought bubbles that Twilight has, and then the immediate responses from the little girl. Like, Anya, she immediately has things to say in response to his dialogue or thought bubbles, which I was like, that's really funny because he has no idea what the fuck's going on, and I think like it's so comedically timed. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. I also love throughout the series what happens is that Twilight or some adult will say a word, and Anya hears that word, doesn't know what it means, but knows that's what they want to hear. So she'll say it phonetically, and it's written out phonetically. And they're like it looks really funny because she doesn't know what the word means. So it's written out phonetically, which it looks different from the way that the word is spelled. So it's how she hears it. And all the adults are just like, I mean, you're sort of right. So I guess okay, whatever. And they just kind of roll with it. And I just, for some reason, that gag always slays me. I just think that is the funniest thing.
Yeah, I love that the name he adopts for this persona is Forger.
Yeah.
Like, talk about hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
Gosh, I love this series. Because originally they like dumped, I think, like the first 6 or 9 chapters on the Shonen Jump app, and so that was how I got into the series, because I was like, oh, is this a series that had been finished or something like that? But they dumped the first couple chapters, and I was like, this is absolutely fantastic. And then it was running monthly for a while, and then I don't know if it's coming out weekly right now. I think it is, or it's bi-weekly. Either way, it quickly became a series that I was absolutely in love with, and I think that it's a hoot and a half, possibly even 2 hoots. I enjoy
2 hoots.
Listen, it definitely brightens the week. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, what did you think of the whole meet cute between Twilight and the assassin? I didn't write anybody's name down. I'm so sorry.
His fake name is
Mr. and
Lloyd.
Mrs. Smith.
His fake name is Lloyd. And
Lloyd.
Oh, what the heck? What the heck is her name?
Either way,
Briar, isn't it? Like something Briar, Briar.
Yor.
Yes. It's Yor. And I mean the fact that like he's off on a mission while he's supposed to go out on this like work party where Yor is basically supposed to show up with a boyfriend that she lied about having, and someone her brother was going to check in on her because his friend was going to be there. Like, it's really contrived, but it's also ridiculous. And so when he shows up at the end and he just blasts the door open, bleeding from the head, like, something about that moment was just fantastic to me. Like, it's so over the top. And works, like, because I think, Brian, like you said, like that first chapter really establishes that super serious, like, this is going to be about spies and information, and then it just constantly flips the story on its head as it gets wackier and wackier as things happen, right? Like the old woman getting mugged, and then Yor jumps from like 3 floors up above to fucking tackle the guy, and she can't find him, and then all of a sudden the little girl knows what they're looking for, so she points, she wants cake. Like, it's such a good little like series of events that just is very comical. I dig it.
Yeah, I think I put in my notes that this one is weird in all the right ways.
I totally agree with that. So we know we've at least got one book that worked for Brian. So we know that that's good. Yeah, I guess do you guys have any other final thoughts about Spy Family or anything else, any of the other books that we talked about here? Should people really keep reading Dr. Stone, Renee? Should people really keep reading Act Age? I mean, I think I need to go once I finish One Piece. There's a bunch of books that are on my list that I need to finish, like Haikyuu. I know ended. I want to read all of Drops of God, but should I read the rest of Dr. Stone and then the alternate series that they did about Dr. Stone?
Oh, the mini series of Dr. Stone. If you read Dr. Stone, I don't think you really need to read it.
Okay.
Because it's just the miniseries that they did for Dr. Stone is about Senku's dad, who's not really his dad; it's his adoptive dad, but they look the same. It's weird, but they explain what happens to Senku's dad in the original series. So if you've read the original series, you don't really need to. It just kind of has a it's more of like fun. Like you can see how things progressed in the regular series, but also I think the side one only is a couple chapters. I read the first like 3 chapters of it, but then I was like, I already know all of this stuff. I don't really need to know the nitty gritty details about it.
Gotcha.
But I know I still read Dr. Stone and Act Age. I think I really love Act Age because it gets really, you kind of get caught up in it out of nowhere. At least that's how it felt for me, because at first I was just like, oh, I'm just reading this because I want to get to that point that I saw and I want to know how we got there. But then after a while I got really caught up in the series, and I really do love the art. I think is what I love the most about it, although every character with black hair looks like Kay, which kind of annoys me.
Right. I was gonna say
like all the female characters with black hair, they all look like the main character, and I'm like, I don't remember who I'm looking at right now. But other than that, I really love the art, which is why I really like that book. Dr. Stone, I love all the gags in it, and also I love that Senku will come up with ideas. They're like, what are we going to make next? He goes, we're going to make a drone. And remember, everything is in a stone world, like a Stone Age type thing. So it's like, they don't even have electronics. And he's like, we're going to make a drone. You're like, how in the crap are you going to make a drone? You've got to be kidding me. And to see, kind of like, it's like watching those YouTube videos where they're like, we're going to make a functioning irrigation system using a pencil and 12 rubber bands. You're like,
it's like watching primitive technology. I got
exactly.
you.
And so the thing is, like, that's what I really like about the series. And, as the series progresses, you get a lot of different characters and there's a lot of people to love, and you're not just solely focused on Senku. If it was just mainly focused on Senku for the entire series, I think I would be with Brian. I'd be like, I don't know if I can stand this. But because you get all these other characters, and again, I think when they introduce Chrome, who is a person that's grown up in the Stone Age, spoilers again, and I'm really sorry, but there's no other way to talk about this book in this sense. When you meet this character who has this love for this thing that he has, he refers to himself as a sorcerer at first, and then Senku explains to him that what he has always been obsessed with is actually called science, and Senku explains to him, all the things that you can do with science. And Chrome kind of just becomes this wide-eyed, person that's like, science is incredible. I want to learn all about it. I want to know everything. And, so that you sort of see like this very passionate and actually very kind person wanting to learn. And I think Chrome becomes a very big part of the rest of the series. And it's sort of kind of, I feel like the series would not be as popular as it is without Chrome and the other characters that become a part of the series. And it doesn't really focus on Senku as much, even though he's very pivotal to the series. But I would suggest, if you feel like Brian does after the first 3 chapters, I would say what Mike said, read the first volume, see how you feel. But I think that it is a very good series, and it's a very funny series, and it's very interesting. And I would say it's at least worth that first volume try.
For sure.
All right, you've convinced me.
Yeah, we got
I'll stick it out. I'll read I'll read the next 5 or 6 chapters.
Exactly. So I was going to say, Brian, so I don't know if you've had a change of heart or anything, but yeah, I appreciate you actually digging in and trying out some stuff, because I forget that the first chapter of a lot of these are like 60 pages, and sometimes that's too much story in one chapter. But yeah, I appreciate you taking the risk with us for this week.
Yeah, it was fun. I'm glad you guys gave me some stuff to check out.
Yeah, and I also want to say this, that a lot of the times, like, we have to remember that manga and mangaka, they're doing this on a week by week basis. So if the story suddenly shifts, it's because they're worried that their series is going to get canceled, or if there's something that's really, really in your face, it's because they've been told, or they believe that this is what's going to get them votes in the magazine to stay, doing this thing that they love. Not that that's an excuse for some of the weird things that come out, because sometimes you're just like, okay, that seems unnecessary, but that's something to keep.
Everyone should go read Bakuman so they can completely understand what we're talking about here. But like,
have we made you read Bakuman?
No, I'm actually kind of shocked that neither of you gave me that for this.
Well, I think we were definitely aiming for newer stuff. I guess Act Age isn't the newest, but still, yeah, I think Bakuman is for anybody that wants to get into the sort of nitty gritty of manga. Like, of course, Bakuman's not the exact thing of how the world works in manga, but does a pretty good job, from my understanding, of explaining how manga is created, why creators do some of the things that they do, and what it means to break into the industry that is incredibly competitive, especially when it comes to working at on Shonen Jump, or any of the monthly magazines that they have and stuff. So yeah, everybody should read Bakuman. But anyways, we got to wrap up here. We've been talking about manga for way too long.
I could talk about manga all the time.
I know that's why we've got to stop. So thank you guys so much again. Thank you, Brian, for taking some risks here and trying some books. And I'm glad that you at least found a book that you're into, at least to continue reading. If not 2, we'll see where you are with Dr. Stone. But yeah, you can follow us all on Twitter. You can follow Brian at BrianHead. You can follow René at Rodriguer29. You can follow me at Mike Rappin, and the show at IRCB Podcast, where I post things and stuff. And I do want to say thank you to all the people on Patreon in specific over the last few months. I know that it's been really rough. Folks have been up and down with everything that's going on, but your continued support has really made our show possible, and we've been trying to do a lot of really interesting things on Patreon, so I hope you've been enjoying it. Please let us know if there's anything you want to hear us do. We're wrapping up Saga of Saga. Like, it's going to be done in a couple of days, couple of weeks, I think. So if you guys want to see another long form story, please let us know. Reach out to us. We're up for practically anything. Maybe not something as long as Saga, but maybe something a little shorter, maybe a run on a specific Big 2 series, or maybe an indie series that you'd like to see us cover. We'd love to hear it, so please let us know.
This show and our many subscriber-only episodes are powered by fans like you on Patreon. As Mike said, it's we really appreciate it all, so you can join now at patreon.com/IRCB podcast.
And if you haven't already, please go ahead and give us a rating and a review on the podcatcher of your choice. Give us 5 stars if you like what we're doing. It'll help us climb the ranks and do more cool stuff. If you want to communicate with us more directly, you can always join us on Discord at ircbpodcast.com/Discord, and make sure to tell a friend or 2 about the show.
Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all of our music. Xander is a great friend, a great GM, and also a fantastic editor. He's the best. I want to say thank you to Brian and René for being on this episode. I want to say thank you to everyone out there who continues to listen and support our show. It truly means the world to us that you guys are listening to this. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you.